Hey everybody, welcome to the Real Kyper at Noon show. I'm Nick Kyprios. Doug McLean is on assignment. He'll be back tomorrow, and we'll definitely get his take on wrapping up the whole week. And no question, a very interesting week. So we've got a pretty jam-packed show for you today. Also joining me later on in the show is Paul Maurice, head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. I got a chance to catch up to him earlier this morning, and you're not going to want to miss that. Paul Maurice and I go back to the mid '80s. He was actually a player. Yeah, if you do the bio on him, you'll find out he had a pretty decent junior career. I was with the North Bay Centennials at the time in the Ontario Hockey League, and of course, Paul Maurice came in through the CompuWare, Detroit CompuWare system, and ended up being a Windsor Spitfire. And of course, Pete Carmanos owned the Windsor Spitfires, thus linking him eventually to the Hartford Whalers and the Carolina Hurricanes. So Paul will give us his take. Of course, I'm going to ask him about Matthew Tkachuk and whether or not he'd like to see him in a... No, I did not ask him about a Winnipeg Jet uniform. That's tampering. He would never answer that, but I'm going to talk to him about press conferences. And I'm going to talk to him about being a coach today in 2020 and how it's evolved in the last 25 years. Let's not forget, he broke into the league in the late 20s. And that, the longevity of what Paul's been able to do. And what do we have? Carolina, Hartford, of course, that organization, the Leafs, and of course, since 2014, the Winnipeg Jets. So you're not going to want to miss Paul Maurice coming up a little later. I've also been put in a position now to do something I've never done before, even at Sportsnet. I'm going to give away a Harley-Davidson. How cool is that? Yes, blitzbet.eu has put me in charge of giving you all a chance to win a Harley-Davidson. And can I enter, Michael? Can I enter? No, I can't enter. I want to enter. I love a Harley. But this is going to be a giveaway that I'm going to be able to do through blitzbet.eu. And you have a chance by simply placing a bet on a hockey game. That's it. And it could be as little as $1. And you can do this every day to give yourself a chance for one entry into a contest where I will give away a Harley-Davidson after the final game of the Stanley Cup. So you got some time here. And if you want more details, please go to my Twitter account at Real Kyper. And I've pinned a tweet there. And it'll give you more details on how to win this Harley-Davidson. Later on in the show, also, Joe Holca. I had Joe on, about a week and a half ago. We all know how I feel about sports betting, that I'm not the best guy to ask, but willing to learn. And we're going to do another segment. We're going to do segment 2 of Betting 101. So I'll get to ask him questions about, what's a parfait betting? What is parfait betting? I know what it is. It's ice cream and whipped cream. That's what... No. It's not parfait. It's parlay. Okay. We'll get Joe on in a little while after we get through with Paul Maurice, and he'll explain that to me. But first and foremost, I really wish, folks, that I could start off by telling you how much I enjoyed the games last night. What do we have in 3 games? 25 goals. And it was really capped off by a very entertaining Colorado and Dallas game where it went back and forth. And Dallas now being in a position to call those guys the comeback boys, because they're never down and out in these playoffs. And they've been a lot of fun to watch. But we can't, because that's not the hottest topic right now. And we know what the hottest topic is: to play or not to play when it comes to the National Hockey League. And we saw last night the NBA players take a stance, boycotting the games in the wake of the shooting of Jacob Blake. And of course, if we go back to March 12th, the NBA really led the whole charge in shutting down with COVID. And it wasn't soon long that the NHL followed. So are we just to assume that the NHL players and the league will just follow suit of the NBA and start boycotting games. And if you watch the timetable of what happened last night, I don't think there's really any indication to suggest that the NHL is ready to go down that path. And we'll have to wait and see because we know we're live here a little over 12 noon Eastern, and so much can change, not only from hour to hour to, minute to minute. Don't think for 1 second there's not a ton of calls right now going on between Gary Bettman, Donald Fear, who heads the NHL Players Association, and the 8 teams involved. Whether we're talking Dallas or Colorado, Vegas, especially maybe Vegas and Vancouver, and the Islanders and Philadelphia and those teams. What do you do? Where do you go here now? So we know those calls are happening behind the scenes. But as far as last night's concerned, and maybe we look at Boston and Tampa Bay, and we give some leeway there because we know that the players were already in the dressing room before any kind of news came out, and didn't appear that it was really brought to their attention on whether or not they knew about the NBA stance, or whether or not they would have thought about maybe canceling that game. It didn't appear to me, from everything I gathered, that was even an option for them. So then that takes us to the Colorado-Dallas game, where it was hours after that. And I think the NHL, and at least the NHL Players Association up until that point, made it abundantly clear. The show must go on. How they feel now, we'll have to wait and see. And we know where the temperature's at. And we know it was abundantly clear through social media that there is a strong push to say that those games should have never been played, should have never, Hockey Night in Canada or NBC Sports should never have aired the games. It should never have gotten that far. And we know in the year 2020 that people have a voice. It needs to be heard. It needs to be respected. But we are clear that not everybody believes in the same. We all believe in the same stance. Don't get me wrong. We believe that, we want equality. We want justice. We want accountability. We're okay with that. I think where we're not okay with is the road or the vehicle that we get there. And we have difference of opinions on how our voice could be heard loudest. And we saw that with the broadcasters. Christine Simpson from Hockey Night in Canada, Kelly Rudy, they made it pretty clear. I look at Kenny Smith from TNT, covers the NBA. He made it pretty clear. He got up and left. I mean, that's a powerful statement. Now, are we all to sit here to judge and say one's right, one's wrong? Or can we just say, that's your opinion, that's how you feel, and we need to respect that? But I think the NHL made it pretty clear that they want to play. They want the show to go on, and they still want their voices to be heard in their own way, but it doesn't come at the expense of shutting down the games. Now, the NHLPA is now in a position today to say, okay, then now it's our call, because we are the product. Whether or not the NHL feels a certain way that the business should go on, there are no games unless I step on the ice. There's nothing to watch. So the ball's really in the court of the NHL Players Association and the way those guys feel. Now, on the surface, I can tell you that they don't want to spend one more day in that bubble. Okay? Whether or not we're talking about a temporary shutdown with a boycott of a few games, or is it going to go any deeper? And we know that the NBA players are going deep here. There's some that want to completely shut it down. And we don't know what's going to happen. Apparently, as of now, they're in a board of governor meeting. Some of them want to go home. I think they voted to resume. Jordan just came in with the news, so they're going to
the
resume.
NBA players just voted to resume about 14
Okay.
minutes ago. The news came through.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Jordan, because that speaks volumes. It absolutely speaks volumes. And we can all have different opinions on the best vehicle to take in getting our message out. And I'm, for one, at least believe that when we talk about the players in the NBA and the NHL, their best platform and the best way to keep your voice going strong is through the game. And when you shut down, of course it has an impact, an immediate impact, and it's a wow factor. But you got to find out how far you want to push on that, because the longer you shut down, or if you completely walk, I think you personally lose your biggest stage to voice your opinions on a daily basis. And I don't necessarily think the best way to continue to push the message is by shutting down the game. So I think basically the NBA may have felt that way. And if you're the NHL players and you want to keep pushing to mass amount of viewers, it's through the game. It's through performing every night. And if you've got this massive audience for 3 hours a night, better chance to get your message through on that than being home. Because as they say, out of sight, out of mind. And I'm glad that the players are coming back and they can continue to send their messages in different ways. And, I hate to say it, but the other factor in all of this that probably hasn't been talked about is the money. Okay? And they say when you want to find out what really is going on behind the scenes in a business, you follow the paper trail and you follow the money. And this is where we are. Say what you will, we are still talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry. And you got to understand now that decisions are made because of this. And they're very powerful. They're very powerful. And if you look at the NHL, for example, they don't have the luxury of multi-billion-dollar contracts that go deep like the NFL, the NBA. They were fortunate enough to get one out of Sportsnet, but it's still predominantly driven by different revenue streams. We know that the fans aren't there, but the sponsors are there. And at least Rogers and NBC are getting the games out of the way so Gary can go get a new deal. He wants those off the books. You can't do that if you shut down. And you also are in a position where if you're the NHL Players Association, you got this thing called escrow. And while they didn't stroke a check that I heard was up to about $70 to $100 million to form two bubbles in Toronto and Edmonton, okay? $100 million that they invested. You think they want to shut down? You don't think the players, if they shut down, if they take that away from the owners won't turn around and say, okay, you were pay now or pay later, but you will pay. And players want to get their message out. They want to get their voice out, but they want to protect this. Okay? And I would believe on the news that Jordan just gave us that the NBA is going to come back and play, that somebody mentioned to someone that you want to mess with this, keep going down this path. And I'm just telling you how it is. I'm telling you from behind the scenes. I've been there. I've lived it. I've been in meetings, CBA meetings. As they say sometimes, the root of all evil, show me the money. And don't think for 1 second it's not factored in any of this and how these things get played out. Okay, that's enough on that. we'll talk about games. We'll come out of Paul Maurice, and we'll talk about some games before we get to Joe Holca. And if you get a chance, go join him on Twitter right now at Joe Holca, and get a little bit of a background on him. Of course, we know him as one of the founders here at linemovement.com, and a guy that's really helped out the Real Kyper at Noon show. So we'll go to Joe later, but sit back and listen to Paul Maurice, a really interesting guy. Funny as hell, too. He's right into that Doug MacLean kind of, can tell a good story and share a few laughs. And we know we could all share a pretty good chuckle here. And as far as you are all concerned, as you listen to it, keep the comments coming. I love it. It's great. And if you enjoy what you hear out of Paul Maurice, hit the like button for him, much like you do for Doug MacLean. All right, Paul Maurice, head coach of the Winnipeg Jets, everybody. Sit back and enjoy. Okay, Paul, it's been 3 weeks since you've been knocked out. Does it feel longer, shorter, or right about 3 weeks, 21 days later?
You know what? That's a good point. Like, so this is, I don't know, 22 or 23 seasons for me. It's the same every year, right? You go into this kind of depression after it. At the same time, I mean, you're going 100 miles an hour for 8.5, 9 months, and then it stops. And then you really don't have to be anywhere. Where you have to be somewhere within an hour. You can look at a guy's schedule 6 months in advance and know exactly where he's going to be within an hour, right? And then nothing. So you go through that kind of depression. And then, usually what happens is you do your exit meetings right after. And but this is completely different. It's been like that our whole year, right? The whole season is not comparable to anything else. But one of the things that I've found that is I probably won't do my exit meetings the next day. I know the players want to do that, right? They want to do their medical, they want to do their exit, they want to get out of town if they live somewhere else and they want to get on with their summer. But I've had way better meetings once you take the emotion out of it. So I'm kind of coming out of the sulk that I go through. And so I have better conversations with players, and you can take more time with them because you're not trying to bang out 20 of them in a day. So they lost, half hour to an hour, and you get way deeper into their year, their motivation, where they want to be next year, all those kind of things. So I'm coming out of my sulk now and kind of getting back to work and starting to plan in an unplannable time.
I have to go there with you in terms of your post-game comments. And don't you wish that you had that time between the end of the season and your exit meetings, like you just spoke of in your press conferences? Wouldn't that help you out a lot too?
I wouldn't change. So I'm sticking, like I'm not. I said one of the things I think I learned in Toronto early on when I was coaching there is that you just go out and say what you think. And I'm pretty good at spacing that time from walking off the bench. Like at least I say what I want to say. I just take the emotion out of it. So I don't think I was overly emotional in it. I got a view from the zoomed in blue line camera that nobody else has. Right. So we get it. It doesn't make it out. I saw it, I don't know, 15, 20 times. I said what I said. I believe what I said. I still believe what I said today. And there's not an emotion. I get what you're saying. Like I will watch 2 or 3 guys kind of religiously their press conferences just because, one, they're entertaining or you learn stuff. But like, you don't want Torts having another day. I don't think it matters for John Tortorella. Like, you give him 2 weeks, he's still coming out and saying what he said, right?
Yeah, or not saying what he wants to say.
Right. Like he's there and he's gone, man. So I don't know. Yes, there's some times that you're still so hot that all you're doing is growling up there and you're not really giving out any information. But I said what I said, man.
And we loved it because it was raw. And that's what people today want to see. They don't want to read between the lines. They just want to hear how you feel. And of course, if you're just tuning in, we are talking about Paul Maurice's famous, now legendary post-game comments on the Scheifele Tkachuk incident. And your first feel, Paul, is to protect your best player, I would imagine.
Yeah, but you know what though? I mean, I've had enough injuries off physical plays where that if I come out hard against the other team's player, you could accuse me of that. So I've had, like, go back to, I mean, people won't remember this, but Scott Stevens hits on Ron Francis and Shane Willis in the playoff series about, 19 years ago. I didn't go off on that. And if you went and looked at it right now, you'd say, oh my God, that was a terrible hit. But 20 years ago, that was a stiff hit. It wasn't all that bad.
And acceptable.
And even like right. You kind of, it's on the line, but you're going, man, I don't want to take the hitting out of the game. I know it's my guy, but I'm not going to go up there and lie. So Pro gets popped along the boards in that series, kind of from behind. He gets a bit of a Charlie horse. Do I want to call on it? Probably a 2, but there's not enough there for me to be screaming for a call every time one of my guys gets hurt. I get that. I get the understanding is that I was standing up for my guy. I mean, I was distraught. I was shook about the fact that we lost Mark, for sure, because it gets tag teamed with not having Brian Little, right? So that's your 1 and 2 centerman. That's I know it coming off the bench. We got a huge mountain to climb now. Like, we're in
that's right.
serious trouble. I lose Patty in the same game, and Mason Appleton, who's a really important penalty killer for us. So they all go down. So I know it, but I'm not coming off what I said, Nick. Like, I don't think in any.
I'm not looking for that either, Paul.
A guy went across the ice and did it on purpose. I'm just saying he got there and he didn't back off it, and it was there and it happened. That's
Paul,
all I saw.
The thing that I found most interesting was the fact that the league completely backed off of your comments. I think maybe as early as maybe 3 or 5 years ago, you could have been you could have been fined $100,000. Who knows, right? It's whatever. Whatever they want.
That's after tax. That's after tax dollars, Kipper. That's serious money, right? So even
money.
That 5 or that 10 that I've been dinged in the past, that's twice as much as they announce, right?
But
that's serious.
I think, Paul, that when we speak of now players, and maybe we'll get into this a little later, and just in terms of the new temperature of the water today, that people have platforms, they have something to say, and sometimes maybe you may not like it, but you have a right to say it. I think that was a sign from the NHL saying you have an opinion, you're allowed to voice it, and we didn't have that, earlier. We certainly didn't have it in our careers, but you now, and to me, it added to the story. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for coaches to go up there and give you an honest assessment. I thought it was quite refreshing.
Right. I think when I do that, before you go off the hip and say exactly what you think, one of the things you factor is are my comments going to hurt somebody? So I said what I thought. And if there's anything negative about what I said, it would come back to me. Now, Paul Maurice is wrong. He's dead wrong on this, right? And I can live with that. So I had no problem telling you the truth. If I'm firing out something that somebody can have another opinion on, and that other opinion starts to hurt people, or it's derogatory toward a player in a manner outside the game of hockey, then I'm going to be real careful with the words that I pick. And I kind of jumped it. I'm driving from what is now like from ACC. I'm driving down from the Leafs rink, and I live in Oakville at the time, and I get to the 427. And Kipper, I must have done 35 interviews that day. It was early on. And I'm trying to think of the 15 different ways I answered the exact same question, and it's driving me nuts. And I had a bit of an epiphany going, you're not going to survive this, man, unless you just say what you think and walk off and don't think about it again. And that's kind of what I do. Now, I wouldn't say that, I think I'm actually a very private person. So I'm not an open book, but I work really hard at not lying. Or not, in a serious matter, if I'm not going to give you a great layer of detail, I'm not going to also try to hide that layer. I'm just going to say, you know what, either I don't want to answer that question, or this is the only answer you're getting from this. But I don't lie. So I said what I thought, and I still feel it's the exact same way. And it was the easiest way for me to mentally handle it.
I don't think you're possibly ready to publicly say that you'd like Matthew Tkachuk on your team anytime soon, but the storyline is he is so ultra competitive, and you are so ultra competitive. And we know our game over history, Paul, is that some of our greatest players are the sorest losers you can find.
Right.
And
Right.
and that shapes the storyline.
Right.
And Matthew Tkachuk plays the game hard, and he pushes the envelope, and he's willing to go there. Some guys aren't, Paul. We know that. And that's even our early days in junior. We knew the guys that would just do whatever it took to win, and then the other ones that had the limit and they won't cross it. But when you see that, the stakes are really high.
Right. Like I don't have, I mean, you're right. You got to be careful about what you say about contracted players on other teams, but this guy's a real valuable player in the league. And I never, ever have had a problem with that kind of player who pushes the envelope in his play. I got no problem with that. We got referees on the ice, and I got 20 guys on my bench. And if somebody has a problem with it one way or the other, they can try to sort it out between them. So that part's good. The problem is the guys that don't shut up but never actually do anything between the whistles while the play is going on. Those guys, I mean, they just drive you nuts, right? So, but that's almost, you know what, Kipper, there's not nearly as good chirping now as there used to be. Guys were way funnier.
Really?
And maybe it's a craft. It's truly a craft, right? That got developed from the time they were 15 years old on. Yeah, there's nowhere near the chirping. The quality of chirping has gone right down. Right.
But
part of that is
right?
You can't. Well, part of it is you can't say you just can't say some of the stuff those guys used to say. But you know, you'd be on the bench, some nice behind the bench, and you got the card up over your mouth because the guy on the other team just said something really funny, or one of your guys got it, but it's not as funny as it used to be behind the bench. You guys were way better at it.
And Paul, we had 18,000 people screaming as well in the bubble. I would imagine that would have been an unbelievable chance to chirp,
right?
Even from bench to bench, you can hear it, right?
Yeah. It's not as good. It's just nowhere near as good.
Oh, that's disappointing.
That's disappointing. It is. It's a kinder, gentler National Hockey League.
Paul, we know we woke up today, and again, the temperature of the water out there, and we saw NBA players shut down last night. We know that the NHL is contemplating a lot of things today. As a coach, Paul, it's a different scope now dealing with these athletes. In our day, if we went back, even if we had a platform or a voice, no one cared to hear from me and you in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But it just seems now today, whether even you're a star player or a fourth liner, everybody's got a voice, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But how do you manage that as a coach now? And even the coaches like the Cassidys now and the Coopers who are still in it. I mean, it's a different scope as a coach now managing these players today, isn't it?
It's just a different time. You're right. The ability to have a voice is so much different now, just in social media alone, right? Like Kipper, it's not that long ago that you and I used to wait till after 11 o'clock at night to call somebody because it was way cheaper. It's just not that long ago, right? That's how we grew up. Now you're spinning on that phone nonstop. So the platforms are there. I think that these players that we have grown up in that platform, right? They don't remember the big cell phone that you used to carry with a shoulder strap. So these guys are in tune to this. They have that platform. So it's more about us at our age kind of adjusting to that. I mean, I've the simple rule in the Jets locker room is the players are allowed to say anything they want to the media. They truly are. I've got no muzzle on them. I tell them what I think. They are completely open to saying what they want. Like my perspective is, how do I put it the best? I spend all of my time trying to figure out the Winnipeg Jets. It's all I've done all my life, right? Try to figure out my NHL team. I don't have a lot of answers for things beyond that scope. I haven't studied them. I haven't gone to school. I have no quick fix answers or long-term fix answers. It's not what I do for a living. So I would prefer to listen to really, really smart people discuss these issues. I'm certainly open to other hockey players or people with their ideas. I think that's a really, really good thing. But sometimes, not having the answers and being open about that. I don't have the answers to the social situation that we're in. I don't. I haven't studied it. I haven't spent a lifetime trying to fix it. So I also think that we should listen to those people. That's give them the time. Paul Maurice isn't on social media for good reason. I mean, I talk about the Jets 4 times a day in the media. That's got to be enough for everybody. Other than that, I'm not qualified really to talk about a lot of these issues.
Many of us are looking for those answers, Paul. You know, we also grew up in a culture where I believed in it, and I'll get your point on billboard material, where you often would not like what some other teams have said about you, players, individuals, and you clip it and you put it on the wall and say, hey, boys, this is what they think of us. What are we going to do about it? Do you still believe in that? Do you think it still can touch a nerve? Can you get more juice out of players if they're motivated by different ways, including what somebody said on another team? Is that still out there in 2020?
I think that's out there in the locker room, right? If your captain decides something that somebody said on the other team is BS, and he wants to bring it up, that has an impact. The players, the relationship between the players is, and this is for me been true for 25 years, is so much more important than the head coach or the assistant coach walking in. Boys, this is bull. This can you believe that guy said that? They're going, yeah, shut up, coach. We knew that 5 days ago, right? Like, you're so far, you're still spinning records on vinyl. Just go stand up in the hall. Players, but yeah, if the players decide they've been offended, they've been affronted, yes, I think that billboard material is there. Something gets said on the ice. It's usually not very funny anymore, but something gets said in the paper, for sure, they can use it. But it seems to me, because again, in the environment these players have grown up in, they're way better about not firing out billboard material, right? And there's something to the idea that you are not as accountable on the ice as you used to be. Well, I'm going down a rabbit hole on this one, but if you said something in the paper about a team or a player, and it's usually about their character, right? They're not going to sit there and say, hey, well, we don't think their power play is that good tonight. So, we've got them where we want them now. You assess somebody's character, you might have to go and drop the gloves over that. So it was specific. The guy knew it. So here's a better analogy. You remember when the goalie used to put his trapper over the puck, and it'd sit there outside, and a guy'd come through and spear his glove? Everybody knew what was going to happen, right? It was just pretty simple. There's 5 guys, the gloves came off, and away they went, and they're fighting. But the guy that did that knew exactly what was coming next, right? So it was nice and simple and clean now. Like, those days are gone. So you're not as accountable for kind of things. So you can kind of say what you want, and it gets lost in the noise of all of the content that is out there right now. It's just different.
I would assume an instigator penalty, more suspensions, all of that comes into play, and maybe there's a force field around a player that says, hey, even if I do this, what are you going to do about it? Yeah,
I think, you know what, Kipper, and I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. I mean, the physicality is still really a good thing. I've heard for a long time that the players don't respect each other as much as they used to, and I don't agree with that at all. Like, I don't. You remember what was said between 2 benches and the threatening of lives that happened every night, and there was some truth to it. Like, with the way you guys used to hit and fight, there was a real anger on the ice, and it's not there anymore. They actually do respect each other. They do treat each other actually better on the ice until you get, in that when that gets so heated that it gets real physical or something. But even that, I do think that there's more respect between the players now than there used to be.
And I sometimes I think about the way we played from game to game or shift to shift. And sometimes, Paul, I sit there and go, maybe the players today are smarter. They look at an 82 game schedule and they say, okay, if I don't have it today, I'll have it tomorrow. Or, I want my shoulder to feel better next week. So I'm not going to hit with that shoulder as much this week. And if it means that I got to pass up a check, well, you know what? I want to play another 12, 14 years.
I think, and so we're talking about generalities now.
Yes,
we're not
absolutely.
talking specific to players.
No.
But exactly. So what I would say the change is it seemed to me early on in my career, the players needed each other more in that locker room. Do you remember when it got to be 2-0 at home? In a home game, as soon as it got to be 2-0 against you, there was something happening, right? The fourth line guys were coming out and getting into a fight because they might go on waivers, right? They might, right. And so there was a connection between those guys that I don't think is necessarily there. I think they are more attuned to the fact that in some ways they're independent businessmen now. They're far more aware of, just the work that the PA has done to make their players more aware of how the business works. They're far more in tune with these guys. They're far more savvy than they used to be. I do, Nikki. I think I'm not saying smarter because that's a conversation about mental capacity. I'm saying that they are more in tune with different parts of the game than the way you came up playing for Bert in North Bay, right? Like, I'm sure you guys did some tactical stuff there too, but there was a lot of, that red meat idea in hockey back in the mid 80s, right? I think I saw a stat once then when you played, so right around 1988, there were more fights per game in major junior hockey than in any other time in history. That's when you
right in my wheelhouse
played the game.
Right in our wheelhouse.
Right, that's your time. So it is so much different now. In a lot of ways, it's way better. Like, the guys are so much more skilled, right? But the emphasis has been on skill now for a long time. Certainly in the NHL after 2006, the improvements that the NHL made to the game were huge and real. These guys can come in now at 20 years old, 18 years old. They can skate, they can shoot, they can play now. They didn't have to. I just remember Joe Thornton being in Boston and Pat Burns saying he's on the fourth line playing 4 minutes. Pat Burns saying, I can't play him anymore. He's got to put on 20 pounds. He's got to get bigger. So this guy's a moose already, right? He was only like 195 pounds. But he was right. Like, these guys couldn't play then. And now we flash forward. These kids are coming out at $1.75, skate like the wind, and they're exciting as hell to watch. So the game is, for me, way better than it used to be.
Nick Kypreos here on the Real Kyper show, Real Kyper at Noon show, joined by head coach of the Winnipeg Jets, Paul Maurice. And for those of you that don't know, Paul and I are roughly the same age, and we played junior hockey against each other. The era that he just mentioned before in the 80s, and battle of North Bay Centennials versus the Windsor Spitfires.
Are you going to talk about your penalty shot right now?
No, that was a horrible penalty shot. I was so disappointed. I had a penalty shot in the playoffs against Windsor, and I begged Bert Templeton to let me take it. And of course, I'm one of the top scorers in junior that era. And I tried to go 5-hole against Jablonski. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, but the other part, what's that? The Paul Harvey part of the story is I was the guy who put his hand on the puck in the crease that caused that, and I'm leaning over the bench. You didn't have to go on the bench, right? I got my head down, hanging on the bench, and then I see you come out, and I go, okay, I got a chance. So I don't mean that disrespectfully, but Tommy Webster was the coach of the Spits. Okay, I got a chance. He's not going to bench me if Kipper don't score. So that was my first introduction to Nick Kypreos, but you guys had a good team.
We had a heavy team. Troy Crowder, Mike Hartman, Adam Bert, Darren Smith. Oh my gosh. But that was the Bert Templeton way, right? Beat you in the alley, beat you on the ice, whatever it took. Now did we fight? Did we ever fight?
I know my teeth, so I'm gonna have to say no. You were a bit of a
definitely
heavyweight.
Remember you.
Yeah. You remember skating past me. That's what you remember.
Yeah. But we did go to training camp together, didn't we? You got invited
I was Flyers in St. Louis. That was the 3 pro camps.
We were together in Philadelphia because I signed my first contract there. And
do you remember the guys they had at training camp there?
Oh no!
Like,
Darryl
Stanley, my God, Dave Brown. Steve Martinson, do you remember? So Mike Keenan's the coach, and he says, I don't want any fighting in training camp. So me and the 3 other guys who aren't any good at it go, oh, thank God. And then Steve Martinson hit Brian Propp in front of me right on the ice, and over came Dave Brown. And the closest thing that this is an absolute true story. So I saw a guy kill a fish on a dock once, and what he did is he slapped the fish's head on the dock 3 times, and it made this dull thud. And Dave Brown hit Steve Martinson upright, midway down, and all the way down. Okay. And it was a 3-punch fight, and it sounded like that. So I should have just taken off my equipment. I should have just taken off my equipment, So I get to the bench, and I'm 6'2", 175 pounds of me at that point, and I'm sitting there, and Steve Martinson sits beside me, and he looks over at me, and like his face is purple right here, like it's just, and he says, "Throws a pretty heavy punch," and I should have just left, right? Like you just go home, man, because you are out of your league.
No.
Oh my God, they had
that
Rick
was
Tocchet.
Yeah, talk.
They had. Oh my God, did they have a tough team there?
Paul, that was the day you decided I'm going to be a head coach in the National Hockey League.
Yeah. Mike doesn't look like he's getting into a fight. That's what I'm going to do. Be like Mike Keenan.
And what a run so far. 25 years and going strong here. And
you know what?
In a really good place with a really good organization who watch your back, and you feel like you got a good, I don't want to say comfort zone. Nobody really ever feels that when you got to still feel the pressure to win, but it's good.
It's an understanding, and this is, you got to be careful how you say this. So the people that I work for understand the game, and that's the key piece to all of it. And then for me personally, I fit in this town, right? That this Winnipeg is, I mean, we know each other. This fits me and my family kind of perfectly. So you want to be a part of it, and you want to be a part of what has to happen here for us to win, because it's different in Winnipeg, right? There's not, guys, this isn't a destination town. There's two reasons why you want to play in Winnipeg. One, you got a chance to win, and you got a great locker room. So we have to make sure we protect that's a really important thing that we do here. And we've gone through this kind of transition of not being particularly good, bringing in a bunch of young guys, and now they're starting to come out of being young and being into a more veteran group. So there's the challenges that go with that, because these young guys get paid, and it causes some kind of player loss in those years. And I think some of the other good young teams in the league are dealing with that as well. And then building it back up is where we're at now, and exciting. But I like coaching more now than I ever have, by far.
Well, I want to get a little bit into your team, because we got a ton of Winnipeg Jet fans out there, and please give us your comments. Tell us what you think the Winnipeg Jets should do next.
Tell Kyper what you think the Jets should do next. Yeah, keep that's straight line to Kyper on that one.
On those comments, and hit the like button, all you Winnipeg Jet fans out there. So, Paul, it was quite the year in terms of almost it must have felt like overnight you woke up and half your blue line was gone, including the big man, Dustin Byfuglien. And no coach could prepare that. No one could go into an office and draw it up and say, okay, we're still good here.
Right. So we did in the summer, right? So we lost Brandon Tanev up front, but we had some players coming in we thought we could help out with that. But then we lost half our blue line. So we lose Trouba, Sherratt, and Myers, and that's a huge hole. So we understand that, but then we think Neil Pionk can do a really good job for us. And man, did he have a great year? And then we brought in some other players. So we know we're not going to look the same, right? We're not breaking the puck out the same. We're not going to be as heavy in the offensive zone the same. But we had lots of faith that we could survive and then kind of flourish toward the end, right? We would build something that we understood. But the Byfuglien miss, and then I'm going to have to put the Brian Little loss in there. So there's your number 2 center and your number 1 defenseman. It's not about being prepared, because you can't be prepared for that. We had no easy answer for that, right? And especially because of how the Byfuglien situation was structured, we couldn't use that money to go out and replace the player. So we had this kind of enormous hole. And then, so that's enough, right? You've in the world of karma, you've taken your hits, and then it just kept coming. Like it was just one thing after another between all kinds of things, like in your staff, cancer diagnoses, players, people leaving your organization to join other sports. There were just, it seemed weekly, really unusual injuries, to the point that we're in that top 3 or that kind of death group of teams. You get into the top 4 or 5 teams in the NHL in terms of injury, you got a real problem. And we felt we were starting from a deficit. But here's what was great, was they stayed in the fight, right? Like, I think they rallied around each other. So as hard as it was, and as brutal as it was, by the time we got to the pause, I was really excited about this team. Like, we had survived it. And Adam Lowry comes back into our lineup after a big absence, and now our whole team is on the ice for like the first time. We win 4 games in a row, but that's not important. It's you know what I'm talking about, Kipper. It's the feeling when you walk into your room.
Yeah.
That the guys in the room are looking around going, hey, we're a good hockey team here. You can feel that.
Right.
So as soon as we felt that, Kipper, we got a plane back to Winnipeg and they paused the season. And we had paid for this fantastic schedule going down the stretch. We had 4 blocks of 3 games in 5 days with 2 days in between each one of those blocks. And every one, I think 9 of our last 11 were against teams that we were fighting for a playoff spot. We were 2 points behind Dallas, even though they had games in hand. We're peaking at the right time. We've always been a real good March team, and we peaking at the right time. We were excited. And then so the pause was just, of course, right? That's the storyline of the Winnipeg Jets season. Something so unusual that you couldn't possibly have predicted happened. But we're surviving that too. We come back. We've got a whole bunch of challenges in Winnipeg just from testing, from all the protocols that we have to go through. We get to the playoffs, and then we lose Mark Scheifele, and he plays 2.5 minutes, and you lose your number 1 center. And that was almost. I spent the whole year as a coach going, where's your breaking point, right? Are we there yet? So you're always trying to push your team to just under that breaking point. And when you're healthy and strong, that means you can push them hard. But when you have a bunch of injuries and your schedule's tough, you got to be real careful about where you push that line, because then they'll start failing to your expectation and you lose your team, or they lose faith in each other. But we did a really good job of finding that level every single night, and they never quit. So in parts, as brutal as it was, from a coaching point of view, it was one of my most enjoyable years ever.
Yeah.
So I felt good about it.
You felt the character, which is always a nice thing for a coach coming through his team. Now, Hellebuyck had a lot of reasons to say that it's going to be tougher for me because I don't have the big boys insulating me, protecting me, making it difficult to get to me. In theory, he should have had a worse season. He has his best season, which was great. But I got to ask you, Paul, in terms of, do you miss the size more in the playoffs than you do during the regular season?
Yeah.
Did it catch up to him a little bit?
I mean, you know what, Kipper, we're still going through our autopsy of the season. The simplest answer is, look at the men that we took out, right?
Yes.
Like Buff's 2 defensemen on his own, but Benny Sherratt's a big man, Troop's a big man, Tyler Myers is a big man. So the problem with it, though, is to use that as an excuse. You almost have to say that the regular season didn't matter because we did survive it. With all of the injuries that we had, Josh Morrissey was out for a while. We did find a way to survive it. We didn't look as clearly as dominant as we did. Like, we spent more time at our end because we wouldn't get as many kill plays as we normally would with that big blue line. But there were some. We didn't pinch foolishly. We were really good at odd man rushes against. Our gap at our blue line, so forced dump pucks, we were elite in the NHL with that. So this group of defensemen that came in did a lot of really good things that allowed Connor the opportunity to be good. But so what do we say when we talk about goalies? They got to give you a chance every night. But on the bigger picture, for our group, your goaltender has to drag a team out of at least one slump. Right? When things just aren't going the way you need them to go, he's got to go in and steal you a game, and that gets things rolling. So when you look at our year, we had a real tough schedule at the start. We had these injuries. We're reeling a little bit. We go into San Jose and we give up 53 shots and we win 3-2. And that for me was the month. Yeah. So we go in back-to-back into Vegas and we win there. Adam Lowry gets into a fight with Ryan Reaves, and then we have a phenomenal November. I'm just looking at my schedule above here when I'm doing it. Yeah, yeah. And he played the best I've ever seen. The best goaltending I've ever seen any team I've coached was that month. He was just so. What happened there is we started to believe a little that we could be a good team, even though we were beat up. We could survive this. So that's really where. He kind of, I don't want to saved our season, but we needed him to do that to give us a chance to get our feet under us. And that's why he's an elite guy, because he put a month together for us to make us feel good.
I'm a huge Adam Lowry fan, and to go up against Ryan Reaves in that instant was to me, bringing the game back a little bit for us all and just watching it, because it's going up against a bully, right? And he was our today he's our equivalent, I guess, to Probert. So anytime anybody went up against Probert, it was like an eye opener, right? And I thought that was a moment for Adam Lowry. And oh, by the way, he's your fourth line center. You're not supposed to play fourth line center 17, 18 minutes a night, Paul. What's going on? Right?
Yeah. So there's been a hit, obviously, that caused the problem there. And the faceoffs in the neutral zone at their blue line, I've got Laus on the ice, and Gerard puts their fourth line out.
Yeah.
And now he's playing center. Reaves is lining up at center. So there's two enormous men at center ice, and my bench angle is kind of like that. And I see Adam Lowry's head kind of go like this and look at me, and all he sees from me is, because I don't want to lose two guys in one game.
Yes.
And then he just kind of smiles. And then he puts his head back here, and I go, oh, he's going. So it was I guess it almost goes back to what we were talking about earlier about keeping people happy. There'll be a bunch of people out there that thinks that's terrible. But I thought that was so good. That was so good for our locker room, because I agree with you, right? There's in your era, I don't know that every team had a bunch of tough guys. Like my first year fourth line was Daniels, Janssens, and Chase. That was my fourth line. So everybody had a bunch of toughness. And then you have the super heavyweight guys, right? The guys that there's nobody really wants them. So in our league now, that's Ryan, right? He's in that class of player. And for Adam Lowry to do that, like just the rest of the locker room, he gets to get on the bus first. That's for sure.
Paul, listen, we could sit here all day and talk.
Yeah.
I do want to bring up though that, and I want it on record here in the Real Kyper at Noon show, that I gave you, much like Doug McLean, okay, I gave you an opportunity to be one of the best television hockey analysts going.
You did.
And you didn't take it. You didn't take advantage of it. I did everything for you. I rolled out the red carpet for you. Like, why? Why did you go back to coaching when you could have been one of the best with me?
Yeah. Well, you know what? We all make mistakes. We all look back at our career at the fork in the road. But you know what though?
Did you enjoy it? Did you like it?
Well, there it is, right? So how much time we got left? I'll give you
we're good. Answer. We're good.
This is what I didn't like. That was my first. So there's me and you and Dreger and Millard and Scotty Morrison. That's kind of the band that was together. So that's my first introduction. And it's going to sound self-serving. The reason our relationship's really good and mine is really good with Dregs, because I had an eye opener there about how hard you guys work to get it right. Right. The idea from coaches is you guys come out here, you fire anything out that you want. But the amount of information that crossed that desk to me shocked me about stuff that was going on inside rooms. But then also that you didn't use 80% of it. Like you truly worked hard at getting the information right. But this is what I didn't like about it. So that was the first round of the playoffs that year. So there's 8 series. Yes. I would tape and watch every single game because I couldn't go on TV in my mind and not have seen the game and talk about it. So that's the other part of it. I realized there's the whole section of that where the media doesn't really, they don't have the time to watch the games and process them right. So some of that stuff is from the hip, and that's what the stuff that makes coaches mad when they watch it. So it's like everything else in life, right? Like Dreger and I are in Austria, and I'm doing something for one of the stations, and it's raining sideways, and it's 11:30 at night. We're standing outside waiting for a truck to feed tape to somewhere before we can go home. And I'm going, this is nuts, man. Like this is not fun. This is way beyond. No, I'm coaching the next chance I get. So after that one, I took an American League job. That's how bad I wanted to get out of the media.
How can you even compare that? Because we were on location in Calgary, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yes. 2004 was it the final against Tampa Bay? 2004.
It was Tampa and it was Calgary, and Calgary had lost. Right, they were coming to win that night.
They built us a set. They built us a set outside the Saddle Dome.
Yeah.
And Calgary had just lost, and we're going up for post game. And to say the Calgary Flame fans were angry is the
Yeah.
biggest understatement I could have. They were pissed. And they were, and a few of them pissed drunk.
Well served. Yeah, for sure. Right.
So,
right. The game went sideways. They started picking up speed. Yeah.
And here's the biggest issue we had, Paul, is that our backs are towards them.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're sitting in the middle, and I'm kind of going, and everybody wants to fight you and I'm thinking, if I'm one of those guys, like, fight me, right? You got a way better chance with me than you. But everybody now is going to get their shot at Nick Kypreos. They're going to fight you, and they're coming over the fence. Oh, that was outstanding.
So we're live. We're live on TV. We've got a massive crowd behind us, and I'm looking over to Paul, and I see a beer bottle come right past his left ear.
Yeah,
and we're like, go to black. We're on live TV. We're like, go to black, shut the lights off, and we're ducking under the desk. That's how bad it was.
Coaching's way safer, man.
And you didn't want to continue it.
Me. Yeah, right. I was safe. Nobody wanted to fight me.
Okay, last one, because we had a memorable flight, I think, to Calgary, where we're on a commercial flight, and there's a lot of people around us that I guess thought it was a good time to take a nap, but me and you, and we're not sitting beside you. I don't think we're sitting beside each other. I think we're maybe a row or two away.
We were, it was first class, and that was something that I hadn't experienced very much in my career. The other thing I hadn't is so that's Nick's kind of light voice, right? The laugh that he just did. To hear this man laugh full on is something else. You can shake a room. So the movie Along Came Polly came on, and there's the basketball scene with that now late actor
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Well,
Philip Seymour Hoffman was the is the late actor in the movie who had a basketball scene and is about as unathletic as you can find anywhere.
But he fired out white chocolate when he hoofed it to the rim, and that was it for you. That was it. You had lost it, and the entire Chinese delegation of diplomats that was sitting in front of us kind of stood up to see if you were all right, because out of a dead sleep you brought them.
They were
clearly
they were going to kick me off the flight,
out, right? Well, I would have, right? But I was laughing too hard to tell you to stop. So,
anyways, that was a fun time. That was a fun time. But you made the right decision. I will say that you made the right decision to get back into coaching.
Yeah, it worked out all right.
We know that you're closing in on 25 years as a coach. You broke in at age 30, Paul? 29?
I was 28. Yeah, my first year in Hartford, 1995, man.
And
you were in your prime then.
Oh my gosh. When you think of what you've gone through since then, Paul, and how it's evolved and all of it, it's quite a remarkable story here.
It was such an unusual start to a career that it kind of continued. It might have been a little bit like our season, right? Sometimes it's just about surviving and getting better and getting out there to coach the next day. But when you look at the people, like the two long-term men that I've worked for, or let's say groups, Mr. Kermanis and Jim Rutherford, both Stanley Cup champions, Kevin Sheldayoff won a cup. Mark Chipman, that Mark's got just a great acumen for the game. That's the advantage that I've had. And I'll throw out another one, and I know this isn't popular. John Ferguson Jr. is a very, very bright man and understands the game at a high level. So I've been lucky. I've been able to work for men that could watch the team, understood what they put on the ice, so the expectations of what they could do were right. So when we have a year like this year, I know that the people that I work for can appreciate the effort and the challenges that came with that season. I've been a lucky man, very lucky. I've worked for really, really smart men, and that's been a key piece to this.
And the experience of going from a market like Hartford, where we had to light our hair on fire to get people to notice us, to head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs in the biggest market in the hockey world, and then obviously in Winnipeg, where the Canadian culture looks at it much differently than anywhere else in the world. I mean, you've had it at both ends.
Yeah, the outliers you learn the most from. Only 2 years in Toronto, but that was a real eye opener in terms of all the other things that happen in hockey that you don't realize when you're coaching in Hartford or you're coaching in Carolina. And then my year in Russia was a really pivotal year, I think, for just the enjoyment of the game, right? Finding different parts of the game to love. The people over there just are so passionate about the game of hockey and in some challenging circumstances. And then for a Canadian kid, kind of my next hockey game after that tours behind the bench in Winnipeg, and the national anthems are going, and you're thinking, like, your life just can't get a whole lot better than this. You're back behind an NHL bench in Canada, coaching the Winnipeg Jets, and I've had that. I've had that feeling ever since I've been here. This is home for us. Winnipeg's just an incredible city, great people, love the team, love the ownership, and if you like to fish, there's no better place in the world.
Well, we're really appreciative of your time today on the Real Kyper at Noon show.
Yeah,
to come
right
in
on.
and, oh, by the way, you're in your office, Paul. I
Yes.
mentioned at the top you're 3 weeks out of it, and did you go to work today? Are you nuts?
I'm exit meetings today. Yeah, I still come in almost just about every week. I'll come in during the middle of the week, and this is home. My wife kicks me out. What? That's the truth. There, she kicks me. I'm home now. She's got to live with me more than she wants to, so she boots me out and sends me to the rink. There's the truth.
I know you're not actually looking for a joke on, or a punchline on that. That is true. I would imagine Michelle has at times she's watched your press conferences too as well.
Yeah, she said, well, you can coach at the rink, don't come home and coach. That's the line, right?
That's hilarious. But
where the forks are in the shelves, that it's not my job to change that. So
thank you so much for your generosity today here on the Real Kyper at Noon show. Paul Maurice, head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. Thanks for doing this, Paul.
My pleasure, Kyper. Anytime for you, man. Enjoy
your off season and wish you all the best. Paul Maurice, everybody.
All right, brother.
I was kidding Paul Maurice after we finished that interview. I said, Paul, when they fire you, and I say you all get fired, you're coming right back here on the Real Kyper at Noon show, and I may have to be careful what I wish for. They could be calling it the Paul Maurice at Noon show pretty quickly. And much like Doug MacLean, you get that same demeanor from him. Is that, first of all, what you see is what you get. You're going to get a lot of authentic feel out of what comes out of their mouth. That's why I enjoyed Paul Maurice. Went a little long, of course, but when you get such great stuff out of a guy, you want it. You want to make sure that it comes crystal clear to all of you guys watching at home. So, in saying that, maybe we'll touch base. I know we're going a little long here, but we got to mention some of the games that we saw last night. And Tampa Bay absolutely throttling the Boston Bruins. And what did we say at the end of our show yesterday? We have to watch Hellebuyck, see how he responds and what happens on a back-to-back. And sure enough, we found out. We also mentioned to you that we didn't even know who the backup goalie was for the Boston Bruins. And of course, we do now know it's Vladar. Is that the proper pronunciation? We know he's a big guy at 6'6". We also know he didn't look that big when Brayden Point went down there and undressed him. You kind of feel for the guy. He's only, I think he is the first Boston Bruin in history to make his debut in a playoff environment, albeit a bubble, but doesn't take away the pressure that guy felt. And we'll see Hellebuyck, how he bounces back. Tonight, we'll also see another back-to-back with Varlamov. Hey, how about the Flyers getting to Varlamov? And that was just after he broke the consecutive streak of shutout hockey for the New York Islanders, beating Billy Smith. So he's going to have a bounce-back game. And Dallas, I thought, and the Avs, by far the most entertaining game, right up until the last minute when Belmore put the empty net in goal. And I don't know if you remember the play, but it was Miro Heiskanen carrying the puck up. And I really started to get a vibe that Dallas is going to have one last shot at tying the game up. And if you go back and watch a simple play in the neutral zone, it's Rantanen that ends up taking Miro down with a pretty good cross check. And if you watch the way Miro responded, I'm sitting there going, that could have easily been a penalty. Could have easily been and I'm old school, man. I don't like penalties. I want the players to decide it. But when you're that skilled and you're coming up with that speed, I don't think you're going to stop that guy with a legal check. So I thought Colorado got away with that a little bit. Earlier in the show, I mentioned to you all that I'm giving away a Harley-Davidson. Never done that before. Sportsnet didn't let me give away prizes like this. And I can tell you that if you go to BlitzBet, certainly you'll get more information. But if you open up BlitzBet EU account, that's your chance to win a bike that might be worth about $35,000-$40,000. I got to find out what kind of bike it is. Is it one of those low riders? Is it a fat boy? But it's safe to say that Harley really know what they're doing when it comes to these bikes. So it's simple. It's just one entry each day. As long as you put a bet on a hockey game, as little as $1. Come on, you're not going to spend a loony to try to win a $35,000-$40,000 bike. Easy. And that's all it takes. One entry per day, and you can put as many entries as you want between now and the Stanley Cup final, and that's when we'll announce the winner after the final game of the Stanley Cup final. And please go to my Twitter account. I got a pinned tweet there at Real Kyper, and you can get all the information you need. And one note, Canadian deposits only right now. I know I'm working on it. It won't be long before everybody gets a chance, but right now it's just Canadian deposits only. Okay, I also promised you Joe Holca. We've had Joe on about a week and a half ago. We know Joe is a co-founder at linemovement.com and also the chief content officer. And Joe's one of us, man. He played Division I hockey. He's one of us. And Joe, I know you're coming on now. Please don't take any shit from Doug McLean. You tell him right back, I played at a higher level than you did with your stinking junior Canadian stories, and I am your boss.
Hey, we love Doug, right? But yeah, let's make that very clear that I am Doug's boss in this scenario. So yeah, good stuff, Kipper. Like busy times, right? Like working for a publicly traded company like i3 Interactive, like it's been an absolute madhouse just getting ready for NFL season, right? But yeah, always happy to make some time for Real Kyper at noon. Talk a little bit of betting 101. Should be fun.
And how about me giving away a Harley-Davidson? I'm not giving away a 10-speed bike here. Like this is major.
It's pretty cool, man. That's the whole thing is like we're gonna get to do like a lot of things that are just straight fun, right? Like imagine like putting $1 on a hockey game just to make things a little bit more exciting and having the chance to win a Harley-Davidson. Like I just think it's a really cool thing that you're doing. I think we'll get to do a lot of stuff like that in the future too. So it's exciting.
Okay, let's get right to it. This is our second segment now on basically betting 101. What can you tell me about a parlay? Because I was telling you I only knew parlay as a dessert after my 14-ounce T-bone steak, but I know I'm wrong.
I couldn't tell if you were kidding or not. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna
don't
keep
quit your day
basic,
job
right?
as a comedian. Is that what you're telling me?
I don't know, man. Sometimes I can't tell with you, but yeah, like we're gonna keep it basic. Like I said, it is betting 101, right? So parlays in general, like first off, like it is a high risk, high reward style of betting, right? So we're gonna keep it really simple in terms of just like letting you guys know the basic definition of it. It allows you to combine multiple bets into one single wager. So the payouts basically increase the more bets that you include, but you have to have each of those individual wagers win in order to win your entire bet. So even one leg loses, your entire bet.
It all comes crumbling down then off that bet.
Yeah,
and
pretty much.
What type of bets are we talking about that we can add to a parlay?
Yeah, so the cool thing about parlay betting is that these wagers can actually include a lot of different things, right? We can talk over-unders, money lines, spread bets, kind of like we talked about on the last segment. But what's cool about it is for a sports book like BlitzBet EU, you can actually add prop bets to this, but from different sports also. That's what's cool about a parlay. So in theory, you could build a bet from the NHL playoffs, the NBA playoffs, maybe it's NFL week 1, and put it all into just one wager, right? So parlays are really cool. Overall, kind of the odds that you get on each of those individual portions is what gives you that ultimate payout for your parlay. So it's a lot of fun, as long as you're not getting too crazy with it.
Well, and let's talk about how crazy you can get, because I would imagine the odds get worse the more I add. So how many should I put on?
Exactly. So, like, let's be completely real here. It's hard enough to win one bet sometimes, right? Let alone more than one. So, in theory, you could build a parlay with up to 15 legs if you really wanted to, although it's not something that I would ever recommend. Most commonly, you're going to see parlays of just 2 or 3 bets. So, basically, once you get to like that 14 parlay or greater, the edge significantly shifts towards the sports book. So, we got to keep that in mind.
Okay, so can you leave us with one betting tip for tonight, maybe if you want to, and hockey in particular?
Sure. So the way that hockey kind of works is if you want to do a parlay with just hockey only, like I said, you can mix in a bunch of different types of bets. But one of the things that we're doing at linemovement.com is coming up with these betting previews, right? So it's Ian Cameron is kind of our resident sports bettor that's been doing a lot of great written content for us on the NHL side. So a couple of things tonight that he's been talking about is this Philadelphia Flyers and New York Islanders game, right? So it's one of those situations where we know there's a lot of talent here, and it could go either way. This is one of the most interesting series that I think that there is, even though it's kind of that suffocating style that we see for a team like the Islanders, right? So he's got the Islanders today at minus 110 on blitzbet.eu. So I think that's a really interesting one. And then if we're talking about Vegas and Vancouver, this series has been an interesting one as well. Kind of a little bit more run and gun probably than the other series. He actually thinks this one's going to go over 6 goals, and that's at minus 110 at blitzbet.eu. So some really interesting stuff for me, and definitely check out that full article at linemovement.com.
We will, Joe. And for all of you watching, let us know in your comments if you want to hear more from Joe on the Real Kyper at Noon show. And Joe, we know we can find you on Twitter at Joe Holca. You also have your own show. Where else can we find you?
Yeah, Twitter at Joe Holca. You can find a bunch of my work at linemovement.com, of course. I have my own YouTube channel. Pretty easy to find me on basically any platform. So I appreciate it, Kipper.
All right, pal. Listen, appreciate your time. Appreciate you educating me a little bit more. Joe, our producer's sending messages through Michael, my intern, saying Joe's better at all of this than you, or Jordan's better than all
Yeah,
of
let's
this
give
than
Jordan
you,
some
Joe.
credit here.
I'm mixing up my J's, but is that true? Jordan's actually better at this than you?
Jordan is basically good at everything he does. Ask him; he'll tell you.
Yes, very good. That is correct.
Oh,
I would
hope
say when it comes to sports and stuff, Joe and I really complement each other well, because the sports that he knows about really intensely I don't know about, and vice versa. I think our biggest common ground is football. That's probably where we have the most common ground in terms of our knowledges and interests and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I
it's been
opened up a
actually
can of
really
worm
fun.
here, boys. A good thing Doug McLean's not on today, because I'm sure he'd have a voice on both of you right now.
Yeah, I'm sure it would be raspy. He'd be yelling, all of those things. It would be all Doug.
All right, Joe, we'll bring you back soon. We still got to go over over-unders, prop bets, all of that. 25 goals in 3 games last night. Somebody would have not done very well on the under yesterday.
Anytime, Kipper, we can dive deeper into it. We can keep going through some of these basic segments. Just bring everyone along slowly, have a little fun. That's the name of the game, right?
Okay, and it's Joe Holca from linemovement.com and a regular contributor here on the Real Kyper at Noon show. Like I said, Doug McLean's back tomorrow. There's so much I want to get in with Doug tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss that. We didn't even mention the NHL coming down hard on the Arizona Coyotes for testing prospects illegally. Cost them a second rounder this year, a first next year. Is that enough? I personally, I think they got off easy. No mention of stroking a big check. Where's that? That's where it really hurts. But I can't wait to get Doug McLean's take on what happened to Arizona and where is John Chaika in all of this, and where does he go from here? So we'll have some fun there. Tarasenko too, out 5 months. He left the bubble, and now we hear surgery, out 5 months. So even if the NHL is lucky enough to start in January, people questioning where his health is going to be by then. And if it's the same shoulder injury that he's had in the past, what does that mean for him long term? So we'll dive into that as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the Real Kyper at Noon show. We're right back at it tonight. As we said, Philly and the Islanders on their back-to-back with a 7 p.m. Eastern start. And then we've got Vegas and the Canucks. And where is Marc-Andre Fleury in all of this? Does he get his start tonight? I can't see it. But we'll all tune in and we'll all find out. We'll see you tomorrow on the Real Kyper at Noon show. Thanks for coming. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for your comments. Get a rating and review in on the Apple Podcast. And we will catch you to wrap the whole week up tomorrow with Doug MacLean on the Real Kyper at Noon show. Have a great day.